Welcome back to another episode of the Versatile Athletes Training Journal. Today I'm joined by my friend Dan from my Muay Thai class, and we're putting ourselves through a lower body power session. The goal today isn't just to get stronger, it's becoming faster, more explosive and more athletic. Everything we're doing is chosen because it has some carryover to combat sports and general athletic performance. We kick things off with depth drops into a side shuffle. This movement is all about learning how to absorb force before producing it again. When we step off the box, we're teaching our legs to act like shock absorbers. Instead of crashing into the floor, we want to land under control and immediately move into the shuffle. In Muay Thai, you're constantly stopping, changing direction, and creating angles, and reacting to your opponent. You might check a kick, land, then instantly move to the side before throwing your own combination. That's exactly the qualities we're trying to develop here. One thing we're focusing on is landing quietly. If you land softly, you're absorbing the force properly instead of letting it travel through your joints. Once we've landed, we're trying to explode sideways straight away. The less time we spend thinking, the better. Athletic movement is all about reacting quickly, and this drill is a great way to train that. Next up, we've got single leg bounds. Most sports, and especially combat sports, are played on one leg at a time. You're constantly pushing off one's foot, whether you're moving into range, backing away, throwing kicks, or creating angles. With these, we're trying to cover as much distance as possible while spending as little time on the ground as we can. Think of your leg as a spring. The quicker you load it and release it, the more explosive you're going to become. Balance is another huge part of this exercise. Every landing should be controlled before driving into the next jump. If you can't control the landing, you probably won't be able to produce as much power on the next rep. You can definitely feel your glutes, calves and hamstrings working hard during these. It's a simple exercise, but it's incredibly effective for building athleticism. Next, we're moving into box squats. The reason we went with the box variation is because it forces us to pause for a split second at the bottom. That pause removes all momentum, so every rep starts from a complete dead stop. This means your muscle have to generate force quickly instead of relying on the bounce. For combat sports, that's incredibly useful. Sometimes you're standing completely still before exploding into a kick, knee or punch. You don't always get the luxury of loading up beforehand. The focus isn't lifting heavy today, it's moving the weight as fast as possible while staying under control. Every rep we're trying to drive through the floor as hard as we can. Speed is the priority in this session. Next, we're moving on to banded trap bar deadlifts. We've added resistance bands to this bar, so the higher we lift, the harder it becomes. Normally with a deadlift, people naturally slow down towards the top because the movement gets easier. This band stops that from happening. The band forces us to keep accelerating all the way through. In coaching, this is called accommodating resistance. All it really means is you have to keep producing force from the bottom right out until lockout. For athletes, that's exactly what we want. Whether you're throwing a kick, driving through a knee, sprinting or jumping, you don't want your power to disappear halfway through the movement. The hips are doing most of the work in this movement. Powerful hips means more explosive movement, stronger strikes, and better athletic performance in almost every sport. This is definitely one of those exercises that looks simple, but once the bands are pulling against you, every rep becomes challenging. Now we move back into single leg work, starting out with the Bulgarian split squat jump. By elevating the back foot, almost all the work comes from the front leg. We're building explosive strength while also improving balance and coordination. In Muay Thai, you're constantly shifting the weight between legs. If one leg is noticeably weaker than the other, you'll eventually feel it in your movement. That's why unilateral training is so valuable. The goal here is simple: explode up as powerfully as you can, land softly, and immediately prepare for the next rep. Quality always beats quantity. Next, we got banded kettlebell swings. This is one of my favorite exercises for building explosive hips. The kettlebell isn't being lifted with the arms, everything starts from the hips. The bands add another challenge because they pull the kettlebell back down faster, meaning we have to absorb the weight before snapping it forwards again. This quick stretch followed by an explosive contraction is exactly what we use in athletic movements. Whether you're sprinting, jumping, or throwing powerful strikes, your hips are responsible for producing a huge amount of force. We keep our core tight, driving the hips forward aggressively and letting the kettlebell float naturally. If you're trying to muscle it up with your shoulders, you're doing it wrong. We're finishing the strength work with walking lunges with a rotation. This combines lower body strength with rotational control. As we step forward into the lunge, we're rotating over the front leg while keeping everything balanced. Think about throwing a cross or a hook. Your power starts on the floor, travels through your legs, rotates through your hips, and finally reaches your hands. If that chain isn't strong, you're losing power somewhere along the way. This movement also challenges balance because you're constantly moving while holding the barbell. It's one of those exercises that doesn't look particularly fast, but builds foundations that will allow for more explosive movement later on. To finish the session, we're emptying the tank with assault bike sprints. These are never enjoyable, but they work. The aim is maximum effort for every sprint. By now, our legs are already fatigued from all the power work, so this is where the mental challenge really begins. In combat sports, you don't get to perform when you're fresh. You have to stay explosive even when your lungs are burning and your legs feel heavy. This is what exactly these intervals train. Lower body power isn't about chasing the biggest squat or deadlift, it's about producing force quickly, absorbing force efficiently, and being able to repeat that over and over again. I hope you enjoyed today's session, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you're enjoying this series, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Versatile Athletes Training Journal.